a secret final boss, interesting translation decisions, along with the games being destroyed in development, today we'll be looking at 13 fascinating facts about Pokemon Red and Blue. There were originally 190 Pokemon. The famous "Gotta Catch 'em all" slogan was originally going to be a much more daunting task. We all know and love the original 150 Pokemon that were introduced in Generation 1, or 151 if we're including Mew. But did you actually know there were originally 190? During development, the team at Game Freak had planned out 39 Pokemon that never made it to the end of the game due to hardware limitations. These Pokemon had finalized designs, along with their typings. They ended up reusing these Pokemon for the releases of Gold and Silver so they didn't go to waste, but some of these Pokemon included Scizor, Heracross, Tyranitar, and allegedly Ho-Oh due to its appearance in the first season of the anime. You don't need evolution stones to evolve Pokemon. Let me explain. The Gen 1 games, as we all know, were a broken mess. From glitch cities to level 100 Pokemon and missing no. It's no secret these games were held together by spaghetti code that resulted in a bunch of nonsense by today's Pokemon standards. But did you know that you can actually bypass the need to use stone evolutions on certain Pokemon? For example, to evolve Nidorino or Nidorina, have them level up during the battle, then switch to Exeggutor to finish the battle. When this happens, they will evolve without needing a Moonstone. This will also work for all Moonstone evolutions. The same will work for Thunderstone evolutions with Growlithe, Waterstone evolutions with Onix, and Leafstone evolutions with Psyduck. From what I've been able to find online, this happens because when a Pokemon levels up, the game checks if the Pokemon is eligible for evolution by checking off an evolution flag. As this happens when the battle is in progress, when you switch the Pokemon during the fight, this process can break depending on what Pokemon you switch into. As Exeggutor's data is linked to the Moonstone for some reason, it reads Exeggutor's data for evolution, thus triggering the use of a Moonstone on the Pokemon that leveled up. Let me know down in the comments below if you have accidentally done this. Would love to know if anyone out there discovered this. There was secretly another island city planned in Red and Blue. In between Celadon and Fuchsia City, there were original plans to include an island, which is referenced in old game concept drawings. This secret island has no routes leading to it, leading to speculation that the player would either have to surf or fly in order to reach it. Sitting deep in the game code, data miners discovered remnants and references to this mysterious island. These data miners even discovered that this area was originally able to be flied to. In the community, this area is referred to as either the unused Safari Zone Gate or Secret Garden by fans, as it is speculated this area was originally meant to be part of an extended Safari Zone or even a whole other city, as the only areas you can fly to in the games are cities or towns. Other YouTubers such as Obsessive Gamer has even speculated that this secret island was meant to be part of the original routings for the games. In order to reach Gym 4 in Celadon City, you have to go through Rock Tunnel, then cut across Lavender Town and some routes to reach Celadon. In this proposed routing, the player would defeat Surge, hop onto the SSN to cut across to the island, then proceed from there to go up to Celadon, beating the 4th gym. We will never know for sure how true this is, but it is fun to speculate. Pokemon Red and Green were changed to Red and Blue to appeal to Western audiences. The first Pokemon games were released in Japan back in 1996 and were originally titled Pokemon Red and Green. When Pokemon began talks with Nintendo USA, the team underwent a massive localization project that involved not only changing the name of certain Pokemon, but the games as well. This was explained in a 1999 article posted on Game Freak's official website, which stated that when Pokemon was ready to be released in Western countries in 1998, the titles of the games would change from Red and Green to Red and Blue. This was because the colours would match the American flag. Coincidentally though, the colours also match the UK flags and the Australian flags. Not only does it match the flags, but it also appeals to the country's interest in sport, through demonstrating opposition to one another. This proved to be a genius decision, as the games would go on to sell tens of millions of copies worldwide. Gen 1 originally planned to have a female protagonist. It's kind of strange to think about by modern Pokemon standards, but the original Pokemon games never had a female playable character. This wouldn't be featured until Gen 2's Crystal came out, with Lyra becoming the first female playable character. This has gotten speculation through this original artwork that featured Red with Bulbasaur, Blue with Charmander, and this mystery character known as Green with Squirtle. This artwork was also featured on the cover of the Pokemon Red and Green official strategy guide. When Ken Sugimori drew this artwork, the logic to include this character was to have all 3 of the starter Pokemon have a corresponding trainer. Interestingly, however, when the game was data mined, no reference to a female playable character was found. It's put forward by the Obsessive Gamer that this female character was conceptualized very late in development, and the team didn't have enough storage on the Game Boy hardware to fit this character in. The team even had to remove the debug software in order to just fit Mew, so it would be extremely difficult to create sprites that would fit within the game's capacity. This character would eventually feature in the comic Pokemon Craft DX, and would go on to be a staple in the Pokemon Adventures manga. This character is also a playable character in the Fire Red and Leaf Green remakes. When you beat the Elite Four, Professor Oak actually comes for your rival, not you. When you finally beat the Elite Four after a long journey through Kanto, you are made to battle the Pokemon champion, your rival, who also happens to be Professor Oak's grandson. Once you defeat him, you become the Pokemon League champion. Once the champion is defeated, Oak at superhuman speed races to the Elite Four and has the dialogue of, "I came when I heard you beat the Elite Four." What most people miss, however, presumably due to mashing the A button, is that Oak actually came to see your rival, not you. But just as he arrives, you've beaten the champion. What an embarrassing yet justified moment for your rival. Professor Oak was the true final boss. Speaking of Professor Oak, his grandson, the Pokemon League champion, was originally not planned to be the final boss. Rather, Professor Oak was. That's right, after undergoing some classic Gen 1 code manipulation and glitching, it is possible to have Professor Oak battle you. Given that Professor Oak would use an insanely powerful team with a Pokemon consisting of the starter neither you or your rival chose, it suggests that Oak was intended to be the true final boss of the Gen 1 games. You can entirely skip the Rocket Game Corner. Okay, as we all know, in a normal playthrough, once you get to Lavender Town, you would take care of Team Rocket under the Game Corner, obtain the Silph Scope, and use it to get past the Marowak guarding the top floor of Pokemon Tower in order to save Mount Fuji, who's being held hostage by Team Rocket. Without getting the Silph Scope, there is no way to progress through the storyline, until it was discovered that you could just use a Pokédoll. A Pokédoll is an item that can be purchased from the Celadon department store and when used in battle, allows you to run away from any wild Pokemon. This actually works on the Marowak in the Pokemon Tower, thus allowing you to completely skip having to take care of Team Rocket in Celadon City. Charizard can actually learn Fly in Red and Blue. Okay, let me explain this one. It's famously known that Charizard in Red and Blue annoyingly cannot learn Fly despite it having wings, being a flying type, and being able to learn the move in every subsequent game that came out. However, if you have a copy of Pokemon Yellow, or a friend with a copy, it is entirely possible for you to trade your Charizard over to a copy of Yellow, teach it Fly, then trade it back to your copy of Red and Blue, and voila, you can now fly with Charizard. I think that earns a sub if you didn't know that one. The old man from the catching tutorial was actually drunk. As spoken about a bit earlier, when Pokemon was being introduced into the West, it went through a tenuous localization effort, ensuring that cultural differences between Japan and the West were minimized. One of the funniest examples of this, however, comes right at the beginning of the game during the catching tutorial. In order to move towards Viridian Forest and continue through the storyline, the player encounters an old man who teaches the player how to catch Pokemon. In the original release of Pokemon Red and Green, the old man says that he was drunk and that his head hurts. Once the games were translated and localized into English, the dialogue changed to the old man needing his morning coffee. I totally understand this change. Mew was secretly added into the code right at the end of development. What would Red and Blue be without all the Mew rumors? From completing the Pokédex to defeating the Elite Four over 100 times and a mysterious truck in Vermilion City, the rumor mill surrounding Mew was a key part of Gen 1's appeal. As we all know, Mew is not regularly obtainable outside of a few simple exploits, but it was almost not in the game code at all. During development, Satoshi Tajiri, the creator of Pokemon, secretly put Mew in the game code extremely late in development without the knowledge of Nintendo. Tajiri was able to do this after the team removed the debug features, freeing up 300 bytes of code which allowed Mew to exist. The point of this was to create interest in the game through creating rumors that would spread like wildfire through word of mouth and online forums about an unknown secret Pokemon. The game was completely destroyed during development. The original Pokemon games were developed on Unix computer stations which had faults quite frequently. These systems would often bug or even crash. The small team at Game Freak were used to this and learned how to manage it without ever losing data. Except one time, after about 4 years into development, their system crashed severely, erasing most of the data they had created up to that point. This included the map, the main character, and even all of the Pokemon. Junichi Masuda, who was working as a developer and composer on the original titles, knew that if they could not recover the data, the games would be finished. Far too much time, money and effort went into the game by this point, and it would just be inconceivable and probably impossible to recreate everything from scratch. Nobody knew how to fix it. Junichi worked tirelessly asking online for help, contacting the Unix company, and reading multiple books on how the software worked. Eventually, and thankfully for all of us, Masuda and the rest of the team figured out how to recover the data, and the project was saved. It's weird to think about how an error like this could have resulted in Pokemon never existing. The bug type is the most important type in Pokemon. As mentioned earlier, Satoshi Tajiri is the creator and father of Pokemon. As a child, Tajiri had an interesting hobby, being the collection of insects. Tajiri would spend hours upon hours hunting and collecting bugs around his hometown of Mashida, Japan, which sits within the Kanto region of Japan. After his hometown started to urbanize, the places he once used to hunt and collect bugs started to disappear. Wanting to keep this hobby alive and allow kids of the next generation to experience the magic of collecting insects like he got to, the idea for Pokemon was born. After seeing the Game Leak cable for the Game Boy, Tajiri had this to say: "I imagined an insect moving back and forth across the cable. That's what inspired me." In saying this, the bug type should be regarded as the most important type in Pokemon. Are you ready for Pokemon Day? Head on over to my latest video on screen now where I tell you what we can expect for Pokemon Day in 2024.